Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Tom.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
It's a pleasure to have you with us once again. And today is our culture unit, and we're trying to figure out how to do Chinese calligraphy. This is something that all of you out there probably have some experience with, but hey, we foreigners kind of struggle with this.
Yeah, I've never taken a Chinese calligraphy class here. Have you, Tom?
Yes, I have. And you know, it looks easy when you see people on TV taking the brush and writing Chinese characters. Oh, that looks easy. And then you hold the brush and you start to do it and you realize, gee, my calligraphy just sucks. It's just horrible. I could never figure out how to get that one stroke on shui, you know, the last stroke on shui when it kind of hooks back up to the right. I just could never figure out how to do that. But masters of calligraphy, of course, can do that and lots of other things.
Yeah, I'm not very good at it myself. I took a trip down to Tainan, and there was a guy who's known for his calligraphy, and I took the little tour. And afterwards, I bought this kind of silicone map to practice the characters. I never did, but something that I still want to do. Let's get started, guys. We're going to talk about the style and substance behind, I guess you could say, Chinese calligraphy through the ages. Let's get started.
Settle your feet firmly. Draw in a deep breath and release it smoothly. Steady yourself and then bring brush to paper. Whether you're a casual hobbyist or a renowned artist, the basics of calligraphy remain the same. To portray the beauty of sentiments in the visual medium of words. Chinese calligraphy is composed of graceful brushstrokes that mirror natural beauty while respecting the spatial relationships between characters. Throughout Chinese history, writing and calligraphy have had a higher status than other visual arts such as painting. Some scholars hypothesize that this originates with the oracle bone script of the Shang dynasty. They suggest that the association between written language and the sacred rituals for which the oracle bones were used granted written characters a degree of prestige that has carried through the centuries. Though there is a clear continuity from characters' ancient forms to their modern ones, advancements in the four treasures of the study led to particularly significant style shifts. Upon reaching the Han dynasty, calligraphy began to resemble the art form we know today due to improvements in the first treasure, the brush. Better paper and ink were also essential for yielding the fluidity that is regarded as so vital in each stroke. The fourth and final treasure, the inkstone, did not see great changes in form, but instead it started to become a piece of art in its own right. Now, thousands of years later, people still approach calligraphy as a meaningful way to cultivate and explore connections to classical history and culture.
Okay, guys, let's get started. First of all, let's look at the title, Style and Substance. You know what style is, just it could be fashion or how someone behaves or dresses or, even speaks. Everybody has their own style, or at least they want to have their own style. But style is seen as kind of shallow. It doesn't have a lot of depth or meaning. It's not what's most important in the world, you could say. But substance is important. So when people talk about someone having real substance, it means they're kind of deep. They have good values. There's someone who lives each day to make life better for people around them, that kind of thing. So substance. So yeah, calligraphy is very pretty. It's a kind of pretty handwriting. But there's also real depth and meaning to Chinese calligraphy, and we're going to talk about what that is.
Indeed. So I guess these are elements of Chinese calligraphy: style and substance, something that is meaningful and it's also unique in its style there. And here's what happens when you do calligraphy. Supposedly, you settle your feet firmly. You're sitting at a desk or something, and your feet are flat on the floor, and they have been settled or placed there firmly. And you draw in a deep breath, and you release it slowly, and you steady yourself and then bring brush to paper. So yes, you'll bring the brush to the paper. I think you're supposed to grind out some ink first, get that all ready, and then put some on the brush, and then you hold the brush a certain way, and then you actually let the brush touch the paper, and you're doing calligraphy.
Well, I guess this is my biggest problem. You can't be dancing while you're trying to do Chinese calligraphy. So, yeah, you have to stand still, settle your feet firmly. Yeah, look at this, a whole process right there in the first sentence. But I guess they've skipped over the ink preparation, which Tom just mentioned. Now, whether you're a casual hobbyist or a renowned artist, very famous for something, we call them renowned for something. Oh, he's a renowned scientist, or she's a renowned violinist. Things like that. People know who you are, usually because you're quite good at what you do. So people talk about you. It is a nice thing to be renowned, I guess, if you're looking for that. A hobbyist, we're just saying someone who has a hobby is called a hobbyist. It's kind of a cute word. So you might be a hobbyist in art or in music, or, there's so many things people can have a hobby in, truly.
Right, and yes, you're a hobbyist if you just kind of do it every now and then, but you don't really expect great results. Or you could be a renowned artist, you're famous, and for both those people, the basics of calligraphy remain the same: to portray the beauty of sentiments in the visual medium of words. Ooh, that's quite heavy there, so this is what you're trying to do. You're trying to depict or portray the beauty of sentiments or feelings about something. I guess if you're good at looking at calligraphy, you can sense the calligrapher's emotions at the time that he or she did that writing or the brushing of the calligraphy. And then, of course, we are also using the medium of words. We should mention that the word calligraphy itself just means beautiful writing. So calligraphy does not only apply to Chinese characters, but it can also be applied to other languages as well. In English calligraphy, or I guess with the Latin alphabet or whatever, we use special ink pens with flat tips, and you write a certain way, but I would not ever suggest that English calligraphy is anywhere near as beautiful as Chinese calligraphy.
Calligraphy simply means decorative handwriting, and usually it takes a while to become a master at, or at least look pretty good. I know at Christmas, a lot of people will spend extra time, writing out their envelopes. We send Christmas cards, as some of you may know, in the West. And my mom would spend, a significant amount of time making her envelopes look pretty. And I just thought, wow, that's not anything I'm interested in doing. Well, Chinese calligraphy is composed or made up of. That's what composed means, graceful. When I see this adjective, I often think of dancers. If you're graceful, you move very elegantly, smoothly. You don't trip and fall or do things that look really awkward. So it's a beautiful or graceful brush stroke. So when you move that brush each time you make a mark, it's a brush stroke. And you guys know what that is just because of Chinese characters. How many strokes do they have? Well, this is just the brush stroke that mirror or copy or look just like natural beauty while respecting the spatial relationships between characters. Spatial just means space. So you have to respect or be aware of the space between characters. I think that's hard too in Chinese.
Yeah, so they're graceful brush strokes. I think you use your whole arm and not just your fingers or whatever, so you can get a really nice brush stroke. And, of course, they represent natural beauty. And then also you've got this relationship between the characters, how many strokes one has and how many strokes the next one has, and kind of how they relate to each other. And that creates a beautiful work of art. Now, here in the next paragraph it says, throughout Chinese history, writing and calligraphy have had a higher status than other visual arts such as painting. So, yes, indeed, calligraphy has been more famous, I guess, more renowned, more respected than even painting throughout Chinese history. Maybe that has changed in recent years, but still, calligraphy is a major art form in Chinese civilization.
Now, some scholars hypothesize that this originates with the oracle bone script of the Shang dynasty. Now, if you hypothesize, usually you're suggesting or putting forward such an idea that explains something. Usually, if you're a scientist, you'll have a hypothesis. That is the noun form, at least singular. Hypotheses is the plural noun form, and then this is the verb, hypothesize. So if you hypothesize, again, you're putting forth some sort of idea to explain why something's happening. So what do scholars or people who study this believe? Well, they think that this writing and calligraphy in Chinese originated or started with the oracle bone script that was prevalent or used in the Shang dynasty. Now, if you originate, it just means you're the people or you're the person who first does something. I think the first original tasty fried chicken probably happened in the American South, where they were really good at frying and deep frying everything. That's my hypothesis, at least. I'm not really sure where fried chicken started. But they think, at least those scholars who study this field, believe that it started with the oracle bone script. Do you know what that is, Tom? The oracle bone script?
I think it's Jiaguwen in Chinese. Yeah. And we say oracle bone script as the English translation for that term. And that goes way back to the Shang dynasty.
Yeah.
And I guess that's basically what scholars are saying. They're saying that Chinese characters are so fantastic because they began with these oracle bones and the script on those oracle bones all those thousands of years ago. And we'll continue talking about this in just a couple of seconds, but right now we're going to take a break and listen to our Chinese teacher.
Hello, my name is Shelby. 书法带你领略文字之美。文章一开始先描述写书法的姿势，延伸到主题介绍。Settle your feet firmly. 站稳脚 ，draw in a breath， 深呼吸，平稳吐气，稳定自己，然后将笔带到纸上。空格1，你是个 casual hobbyist， 业余爱好者 ，hobby 嗜好 ，hobbyist 爱好者，或者是个知名的艺术家。书法的基本原理都相同。To portray 来描述 the beauty of a sentiment 情绪，以字当媒介。这里要表达不论。对 A 身份或者 B 身份，书法的原理都一样，所以答案选 D whether 不论是。Chinese calligraphy 空格2 graceful brush strokes brush stroke 笔画，优雅的笔画，后面接形容词子句，修饰 that 反映自然之美。While 同时也重视 the spatial relationships 空间关系，在文字中，这句要表达书法由优雅的笔画组成。4个选项都含有组成的意思，但用法不太相同。A 整体 is composed of 个体元素，那这句呢是 calligraphy is composed of brush strokes， 正确。而 B make up 是个体加 make up 整体，刚好与题目相反。C constitute 也一样，用法是个体 constitute 整体。D consists 后面还要加个介系词 of， 整体 consist of 个体都不对，所以第二题答案选 A。第二段说明书法的历史价值。第一句，整个历史中，书写和书法一直有一个比较高的空格3。比起其他的视觉艺术，这题关键字在本段最后一句，他提到 granted written characters a degree of prestige. Prestige 威望 grant prestige 赋予威望，大意是说书面文字与使用甲骨文的关联，赋予文字好几个世纪的威望，表示书法有比较高的 B status 地位。选项 A 品种 C 程度 D 成熟，与文意都有落差，所以答案选 B status。第二句 Some scholars hypothesize that... hypothesize 假设，学者假设这想法是 originate with the oracle bone script。 originate 起源于，后面会加 in 或者 with 或者 from 表示起源于哪里。 oracle 宗教上的神谕， bone 骨头， script 笔记，合在一起我们翻译成甲骨文。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Okay, let's continue to talk about Chinese calligraphy. This is how you would talk about this in English, at least according to us. So we've been talking about the beauty of Chinese calligraphy, and we talked about how you would prepare yourself to do some calligraphy. And, of course, a lot of people have this as a hobby. There are renowned artists. And then we also talked about maybe where these where this idea came from, the idea of calligraphy as a beautiful form of writing. Scholars hypothesize that it originated with the oracle bone script of the Shang dynasty. Now, the scholars, suggest that the association between written language and the sacred rituals for which the oracle bones were used granted written characters a degree of prestige that has carried through the centuries. Now, you may have noticed that when I read the article at the beginning, I read this word as prestige. And I just said prestige a few seconds ago. Both pronunciations are correct, but I believe that because the zh sound is kind of difficult for Chinese speakers of English, you can go ahead and say prestige. That is fine. But if you can say prestige, hey, that sounds pretty cool there. Then you can say treasure or measure or television and stuff like that. But here, prestige can be read prestige. And while we're at it here, prestige or prestige just means you are widely respected and you're widely admired, and of course you have a great reputation.
Oh, yeah. I was just telling Tom, I saw a movie called The Prestige. It had, let's see, some pretty handsome actors in it. That's one good reason to watch it. But it was about magicians. It was a really, really, really good movie. I think it came out maybe in the 2000s. I'm not sure. You have to look that up. The Prestige or Prestige. Both are correct, as Tom said. Now, though there is a clear continuity from characters' ancient forms to their modern ones, advancements in the four treasures of the study led to particularly significant style shifts or changes in the style. When you're talking about continuity between things, it just means something has happened without ceasing or without stopping. So there's kind of this consistent existence of something. It's unbroken. Something keeps operating without stopping, perhaps for a rest. Clear continuity. So things seem to be consistent from characters' ancient forms to their modern ones, although there were some advancements or some changes, modifications in the four treasures of the study. Do you know what that is in Chinese, Tom?
The four treasures of the study. Yeah, well, I'm guessing here. It's been a while since I actually studied this, but I believe it's the inkstone and the ink itself and the brush and then the paper. I believe those are the four treasures there of the study. Now, of course, in the sentence here, we have the word continuity, and that just means how something continues from one place to the other, and it is consistent. When I was studying film in university, of course, continuity referred to to keeping things consistent between different scenes, okay? So if in one scene the actor was holding a drink and about to take a drink from it, then in the next cut, that actor had to be holding the glass in the exact same position. You will oftentimes see breaks in continuity where they aren't holding the glass anymore, or they're holding a different glass now, or it's a different person sitting there.
Or maybe the girl has her hair in a different style. It's a mess, yeah.
That's right, because when they film, of course, they film many different scenes over several days. So, of course, that's a film term. But continuity here just refers to how things have gradually changed over history. So, yes, there is a clear continuity from the characters' ancient forms to their modern ones. They've all changed more or less the same way. But there have been some advancements in those four treasures of the study, and those led to style shifts. So, yes, there were improvements in the brush and the ink stick and the grinding stone or whatever it is and the paper. All those things led to changes in style.
Now, upon reaching the Han Dynasty, calligraphy began to resemble the art form we know today due to improvements in the first treasure. Aha! Remember what the first treasure is, guys? The brush, right? Yeah, the brush. Now, upon reaching, you could also just substitute those two words and say, once the Han Dynasty began, you could use that as well. So it's just at the start of the Han Dynasty, that's when calligraphy began to look like the art form we all recognize today. So it's mainly because of the improvements in the brush that was being used. If you resemble something, you look like it. So it could be a person or it could be a thing. Sometimes people will say, I resemble my dad. You know, sometimes you resemble an animal. There was an actor on a TV show, and he resembled a funny character. You know, he was just had a funny face. So you can resemble a lot of things. Well, now we know that the reason calligraphy really looks very similar to what it looked like in the Han Dynasty is because they changed the brush that was being used.
And that was a good 2,000 years ago when the Han Dynasty existed. And so, yes, indeed, Chinese characters have looked the same for a couple of thousand years up until now. And that, of course, has to do with some improvements in the four treasures of the study. And, of course, that mainly had to do with improvements in the brush. Okay, so better paper and ink were also essential. They were also important for yielding or producing the fluidity that is regarded as so vital in each stroke. This word here, fluidity, is not used that often, but it does refer to how fluid something is or how smoothly it flows. So when you want to put a brush stroke on the paper, it's got to be smooth, okay? It can't break up or run into obstacles and stuff like that or have little bristles of the brush fall out. It's got to be smooth. It's got to work smoothly.
Yeah, things that are fluid do just kind of move gracefully and smoothly, like a pen. Sometimes the ink isn't very fluid and it's spotty. Ugh, hate that. So, yeah, it essentially was yielding the fluidity that is regarded as so vital or important in each stroke. Now, the fourth and final treasure, the inkstone, did not see great changes in form, but instead it started to become a piece of art in its own right. Now, if you see that phrase in its own right, just means maybe earlier it was known as being, beautiful or a piece of art when combined with other things. But now this inkstone, doesn't even need the other treasures. It's an art form of its own. Sometimes they'll say that about students who study with a master. Maybe you were working with someone who was a little bit better than you at first, and then you went off on your own, kind of like a band breaking up, right? And somebody becomes an artist in their own right. They aren't dependent on somebody else for making them look good. They're good in their own talent. They don't need anybody else.
Exactly, and that sometimes means they're subservient to something else. So I could say the beautiful model's makeup artist is beautiful in her own right. She is also beautiful just as much as the model herself. And now, thousands of years later, people still approach calligraphy as a meaningful way to cultivate and explore connections to classical history and culture. So yes, calligraphy has been around for thousands of years, and they kind of come to calligraphy thinking about the ancient masters, or they think about it as a connection to the ancient past. Imagine writing Chinese characters on a piece of paper and realizing that, hey, somebody 2,000 years ago was doing basically exactly the same thing. And maybe we've inspired you to do some calligraphy yourself, but hey, you can't do that just now because we need to hear from the Chinese teacher first.
第三句 They suggest that 这关系 between 书写文字和 the sacred rituals for which 甲骨文被使用。That 子句中的动词 granted 同意或者赋予，书法似乎以赋予文字一种威望。第三段来讨论文房四宝。他说 Though 有一种明显的 continuity 连续性，从文字的古形态到现代，文房的四宝的发展 Four treasures of the study， 第一个字母大写表示专有名词 treasures 宝藏，笔纸砚墨文房四宝 led to particularly significant style shifts。 led to 原型是 lead to L-E-A-D， 后面会加名词或者 VING， 导致于什么？导致特别重大的改变 shift 转换或转变。第二句 Upon reaching the Han Dynasty， upon 加名词或者是 VING 表示意怎么样。一到汉朝，书法开始 to resemble the art form。 resemble 相似 A 相似 B， 我们就可以说 A resemble B， 他像他妈妈 She resembles her mother。 好，空格4 Improvements in the first treasure, the brush。 第一宝毛笔的改善，既然文房四宝的发展会促进转变，可以推知书法开始与现今所知道的形式呢是很相似的，是由于毛笔的改善。选项 A due to 由于， B 虽然， C 而不是， D 相反的，与文意不合，所以我们答案选 A。 下一句比较好的纸和墨也是 essential 基础的 for yielding fluidity， yield 产出 fluidity 流动性 that 被视为是如此的重要，在每一笔的笔画中。接着第四个也是最后一宝砚台并没有太大的改变，但是它开始变成一件艺术品 in his own right， 这是惯用语，凭它自己的价值。最后一句，现在数千年后，人们仍然 approach calligraphy， 人们透过书法 approach 趋近靠近 as a meaningful way， 当成是一个有意义的方式 to 5 and explore connections to classical history， 探索和古文化的连结。这句借由表达用书法来培养和探索历史文化，所以我们答案就选 B cultivate。以上是今天的讲解，谢谢收听。
That's it for today. Thank you so much for joining us, and please join us again for another edition of our program. And who knows, maybe you could try your hand at some English calligraphy as well. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.